Hello everyone, welcome back to Force Fellow. My name is Ashok. Today in this video, we will discuss about infinite loading with Datatable in LWC. This feature is very helpful if you are working with large amount of data and want to quickly show data without waiting user for long time. Okay, so first let me start this video by explaining a use case. Then later we will see what infinite loading is and how it can help us in various scenarios to improve application performance and to enhance user experience. Okay, so let's say our account object contains more than 1 million records. Now we have a requirement to create a custom LWC component to show those records in a list. Okay, generally in Salesforce, if you want to show records list, then we don't need to create a custom component. We should use out-of-box list view component for that, right? But here let's say due to any reason, our requirement is to create a custom component and show records there in a table. Okay. Now to achieve this requirement, or in LWC, if you want to show data as a list or table, then generally we have to follow few steps where first of all we have to create an Apex class with a method, and under that method we have to use an SQL query like this. This query may be different in your case based on your actual requirement, but generally this is how we have to write Apex code to read data from Salesforce database and return to the client-side frameworks. Then as a next step, we will create an LWC component. For demo purpose, I already created that here. Then in component, we have to import and call that method either via using via decorator or using imperative approach. Here we have called it imperatively and stored response in accounts property that we declared here. Then finally in HTML file, we have used lightning data table and passed account property in data attribute. Okay. So this is how generally we can read and show list of records in LWC component. And for demo purpose, I already added this component here on home page. So now at runtime, what will happen? Whenever we'll try to load this home page, then our component will make a server request to call this Apex method. And this query will read all the available accounts from database, and from here we are returning all the accounts to the LWC component, and this component will render a table with all the account records. So these all steps are must to show data in LWC data table, right? Well, this approach is fine and will work in most of the scenarios, especially where we have less amount of data. But in our current scenario, these simple steps are not enough. To achieve this requirement, if we'll follow these steps and try to read and show all records simultaneously in a single call, then we will get a runtime exception, too many query rows. Why? Because of governor limits. If we talk about per transaction governor limits in Salesforce, then in one transaction, we can fetch up to 50,000 records, either using single or using multiple SQL queries, right? And here in our current scenario, we have more than 1 million records. So obviously this simple approach will not help here or wherever we have more than 50,000 records, right? And second point is, even if we have less than 50,000 records, let's say 30 or 40,000, then also we should not try to get and show all the records at once. This is because it may lead to performance issues. If we'll try to read 40,000 records in a single query, then obviously server will take extra time to fetch all those records from database, and client will also require additional time to render those records on UI, right? Now due to this, user may face performance issues. Page rendering will be slow and user have to wait for longer than normal time, right? I hope now you are clear with the problem statement, like what kind of issues we may face if we use simple approach to read and show data from a heavy object. Okay. Now let's talk about solutions, or what we can do in such kind of situations where we have lots of data in object and want to show those in LWC as a table. Well, in such kind of situations, instead of fetching all the records together, we should fetch data on demand in smaller chunks, because users typically view only 30 to 40 records at a time on the screen. Now, to fetch data on demand in LWC, either we can use pagination or we can use infinite loading with Datatable. I'm planning to create a separate video to explain how to create and use pagination. So do let me know in the comments if you also want me to create a detailed video on that. Okay? And today in this video, we will cover infinite loading. So now let's see what infinite loading is and how we can enable and use it with Lightning Datatable. So we can say infinite loading is a technique that loads data only when it is necessary. Only when the user requires it. And that helps to reduce component initial load time and optimize performance by retrieving data as the user needs it rather than loading all at once. Okay? In LWC, if we use infinite loading with Datatable, then initially we can load less amount of data like 50 or 100 records. Then whenever user will scroll and reach to the end of page, then infinite loading will automatically make another request and get more data, and this process will go on infinite times. As user reach at the end of the page, then more records will automatically added by infinite loading. Okay, so in nutshell, we can say infinite loading allows to load data in chunks as user requires. And now let's open our IDE and see how we can enable and use infinite loading with Datatable. For demo purpose, I already completed basic implementation. Here I already created LWC component and Apex class with basic implementation. And now let's see how to use infinite loading. So to enable infinite loading, first of all we have to add enable infinite loading attribute with Lightning Datatable. So let me add that here. Then as a next step, we need to listen load more event. So let me do that too. Okay, so what I have done here, with Datatable, we have added load more listener and assigned this handler method and also created this handler method here in JavaScript file. Okay, now what will happen? Whenever user will reach to the end of table, then framework will trigger this load more event and then this handler method will get called. Now here we can write a logic to read more data from server, right? But before that, let's make some changes in our Apex method so that it returns only a few records at a time, not all records at once. Okay, so here what we have done. First of all, we have added two input parameters, limit size and offset. Then in SQL query, we have used limit and offset keywords and passed our input parameters as value. In SQL query, limit keyword specifies the maximum number of records to be returned. Using this keyword, we can set how many records our query should return, and offset is used to specify a starting point or the number of records to skip in the query result. For example, if we pass 20 as value in this offset parameter, then our query will skip top 20 records and return other remaining records. Okay. Now let's make some changes in our component to pass value in these parameters. Okay. So here in JavaScript, we have added two new properties, row size and row offset, and passed into getAccounts method. Now at runtime, what will happen? Whenever our component will load, then this connected callback lifecycle hook will get called, and here we are calling load data method, and inside this method we are calling getAccounts Apex method and passing row size and offset as input. And here we have defined 50 as default value in row size and 0 in row offset. So in this Apex method, we will get 50 in this limit size parameter and 0 in offset. Now what this query will do? This query will return only initial 50 records. Why? Because here with limit parameter we are passing 50 and in offset parameter we are passing 0. It means here we are saying that give me 50 records and skip 0, right? So that's why from this query we will get starting 50 records, and if we'll pass 100 in this offset, then this query will skip initial 100 records and return subsequent 50 records. Okay? It means when our component will get load, at that time we are only fetching 50 records, right? So now the question is, what about other records? When we will fetch those other records? So for that, let's work in this load more handler. Okay, so what we have done here, first of all we are changing value in row offset property and assigning current value plus row size. So whenever this handler method will get called first time, then what will happen? Initially we have 0 in offset and 50 in size. So offset value will be 0 plus 50 equals to 50, right? Then here again we are calling load data method. It means here we are again calling our apex method, but now in this offset parameter value will be 50 instead of 0. So this query will return next 50 records, right? And here in JavaScript we have used spread operator to add new records in existing ones. So at the end, in this accounts property, new records will keep adding, and then those new records will display in data table as well, right? Now before deploying this component, let me enable loading as well, so user can see loading icon when more data getting fetched from server. Okay, here simply we are setting target is loading property as true, and after getting data again we are setting it to false. It means whenever this handler method will get called to get more data, then user will start seeing loader until we get data on UI, right? Now let's deploy this component, but first let's add this keyword here, else you will get an error. And also deploy our apex class. Alright, now initially our component is loading only 50 records, but now it is keep loading more records continuously. Even user is not scrolling. Let me show you in inspect window. Here let's open network tab. In network tab we can see outgoing requests from our browser. So here you can see our browser is continuously sending requests, and if I'll click any of the request, then in payload tab under form data, here we can see apex class and method name along with input parameters. In size parameter we are passing 50, but offset value is different for each request. Here with this request we can see 6550, but if I'll check with other request, then here we can see 12850. It means after component load, our browser is continuously sending requests to server for each 50 records. But why? Why our component is behaving like this? I mean, why our component is keep sending requests to server and trying to load more data? So the reason behind this is scroll position of data table. I mean, internally framework is tracking scroll position as a triggering point to load more data, and whenever scroll position is reached to 80 to 90%, then framework will automatically trigger load more event. Here in our case, table scroll bar is here at around 90%, so that's why framework keep triggering load more event, and due to that our handler method is getting called continuously, right? Now to avoid this problem, what we can do, we can set a default height on this table like okay. Here we have added a div on top of data table, and using style attribute defined height as 500 pixel. Though this is not a good practice to add inline styling here in component. If you want to add custom CSS, then we should create a separate CSS file under component and need to define all the custom CSS there. But for now, I'll go with this approach only. Let's deploy this component again and test it. Alright, now due to 500 pixel height, scroll bar size is also fixed and we are not on more than 80%. So that's why framework is not triggering load more event, but once we'll scroll it down and reach at the bottom, then framework will trigger load more event and then our handler method will get called. Let me practically show you in inspect window. Here let's add debugger in load more handler. Let's reduce height of this window. Now let's scroll and reach at the bottom of this table. Alright, now we can see debugger at our load more handler method, and here we are updating offset value and calling apex method again. And once we got new data, then here we are updating them with existing ones. Let me show you that here. So as of now, if you'll hover on this accounts property, then you can see 100 as size, but after executing this line, if you'll check that again, then you can see 150 as length. Okay. And again, if you'll scroll more and reach till the end, then only our apex method is getting called. Now framework is not making continuous requests. Like if you'll see network tab now, then we can't see any outgoing request here. But once I'll scroll it down, now you can see one request here, and here you can see input parameters. Okay, and this process will go infinite times. Okay, so this is how we can implement infinite loading with Lightning Datatable in LWC. I hope you got it now. Well, here one more scenario we should discuss, that what will happen if we load all the data. I mean, let's say we have only few records in the object, let's say only 40 records, then what will happen? Will framework keep trying to load more data in that case? Then answer will be yes. Framework will keep triggering load more event because at client side, framework don't know whether more records are available or not. Framework only relies on scroll position. Let me show you this practically. And for that, let's use contact object here instead of account, because in contact object, we have only few records. Okay, here simply we have replaced account with contact. Rest all are the same, because in contact object also we have ID and name field. Okay. So let's deploy this class again. Alright, here we can see a loading icon, and once we'll open inspect window, here let's open network tab. See, our component is continuously trying to make request to server, right? Why it is trying to make? Because we are at the bottom of table, and as I said, framework will automatically trigger load more event if table scroll position is at the bottom. Okay. Now let me show you how to overcome this problem. First, let me write code, then we'll explain it to you. Okay, so in this enable infinite loading attribute, we can pass a boolean value. Default value will be true. I mean, if we'll not pass anything here like this, then that will be counted as true. But now we have passed this enable infinite loading property that we declared here with false value, and inside this load data method, here we are checking response.length is equals to row size or response.length is not equals to 0. So here simply we are checking that are we getting less number of records from server from this defined row size? If yes, it means we don't have more data on server, right? So this condition will be false if we'll get less amount of data from server from this defined row size. I mean, let's say we have defined row size as 50, and if we'll get less than 50 records from server, then this property will be false, else it will be true. And here we have used this property. Okay, now let's deploy and test it again. Alright, now here we can't see loader. It means infinite loading is disabled because we don't have more data, right? I think we have covered everything related to infinite loading. So that's it in this video, and I hope this video helped you to learn something new. If yes, then please help me to by like and subscribe my YouTube channel. That is completely free for you and really helpful for me. And also please do not forget to share your feedback in comments. That will really give me motivation to create more such kind of videos for you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in next video.